Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife. I grew up watching a lot of Ghostbusters cartoons, watching the movie a lot when I was a little kid. Probably too young to watch it, to be honest, but I watched it a lot. I remember when Ghostbusters 2 came out on video, and I can see it. And in a certain regard, I get why people who grew up that way, as little kids in the 80s, who played with their friends' proton packs. My parents never got me one. I never asked for one either, so my bad. Like, drank Ecto Cooler, and I get that nostalgia while watching this film. Part of me really wants to go along with that and just man, the legacy of Ghostbusters and my nostalgia is for the 100 millionth time as a millennial is honored. Like, we are the worst generation. Like, I thought the baby boomers are bad, but holy shit. I get all that, but this is such a basic kind of movie, and in a way that, I'm just disappointed in everyone for falling for it, but I'm also disappointed because, Jason Reitman, on this whole press tour and all the build-up, he's like, this is a film to deal with his relationship with his father, which I cannot really figure out. I think that's just a press quote that every critic brings up because it makes no sense when you watch the movie. This is basically like Steven Spielberg's Ghostbusters is what it's trying to do. And that's such a weird touchstone because it just feels like someone going what were big things in the 80s? And you didn't even know who directed the original Ghostbusters. So you're like, I think Spielberg did it. Let's do it like that. And people are like, yeah, it's like Goonies and Ghostbusters, and those are such boring references to put together. It really just feels like he gave everyone exactly what they wanted, but not a Ghostbusters movie. This movie isn't funny. I don't really get the sense that anyone at all related or associated with Ivan Reitman worked on this film. I don't know what a Ivan Reitman influence would be. I mean, he really doesn't have a auteur stamp. Ivan Reitman, he's made some cool movies and stuff, but I think of him more as a basic studio director. Maybe that's Jason Reitman's point in this film, is that he that's basically what he did. He made what is a Lego sequel or whatever it is for Ghostbusters Afterlife as what a good studio director would be, which Jason Reitman hasn't been. He was an auteur director until this movie. I think those days are behind him, and now he's cashing checks. Also, I think to my understanding, was kind of you do this or it's over, kid, and he did this. This movie is about a family with Carrie Coon, McKenna Grace, and Finn Wolfhard, who go to see their grandfather's house because they have been evicted from their previous house, and they've inherited this kind of dirt farm, and they're going to live there in the Midwest for some reason. And they discover all this ghost stuff and find out that their grandfather is Egon, because Harold Ramis couldn't be in this movie, but he sort of is. They sort of learn about him, learn about ghosts, and bust ghosts in this town they've never been in before. Really, this film, after everything we've been through with Ghostbusters, with the other whatever, it's the 2016 Ghostbusters, and this, maybe this is a better movie, but I don't think I'd really want to watch either again, to be honest. They don't really interest me. I think this whole Ghostbusters 3 thing, it's become clear to me while watching this film that no one even knows what they wanted from Ghostbusters 3, and I think Jason Reitman got closest. That seems to make most people happy. I don't need a Force Awakens for everything. I think Star Wars was, changed film history, was a massive cultural thing. I sort of get it in that regard, but if we're just going to just cherry pick every 80s franchise, I'm very surprised the Goonies has not done this yet. I don't know what studio has the Goonies, but I would I would be shocked if that. I'm still shocked that hasn't happened, but especially after this, and that this does well. I think this film is just so boring in its kind of basicness, as just going what are big things in the 80s, let's make a movie about that, and maybe it's sort of decent at that, but I don't really like it. You know, it's not what I would call an interesting film or a good movie. It just kind of like is like getting a really boring cheese sandwich for lunch and going like, well, I guess I'm not hungry anymore. It's like, I guess that nostalgia is gone. Cool. I think that an audience like is falling for this, and people who grew up with the Ghostbusters are just like so happy about this movie. Doesn't make me feel great about the intelligence of a modern audience or people my age who grew up with that, and they're just like falling so willingly into this, because it's pretty pathetic. I think, you know, if you made Joe Dante's Ghostbusters Afterlife, that would be amazing, but like, we're not talking about someone making an interesting Ghostbusters, and I think they tried that, and you know, that movie didn't really work out. It wasn't a hit. Or have an actual horror director do a Ghostbusters movie. That would actually be cool. You know, but this is just, you know, what it is, I guess. I like McKenna Grace, actually. Finn Wolfhard, I guess, is there because of Stranger Things, so that's cool. I like Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd. They have nice charms, but, you know, especially there's a part where he basically sort of explains, or, you know, mansplains the Ghostbusters to a younger generation, which was like, oh my god, everyone who likes this movie, this is their dream. They get to explain to kids why something's important, and the kids have no clue and most likely don't want to know. Also, like, why is Ernie Hudson not shown? Anytime they go to YouTube and watch clips of Ghostbusters fighting New York, they never show. I barely saw Ernie Hudson until he shows up. Spoilers, I guess. I noticed that. And that they didn't know about what happened they keep referring to 1984. I'm assuming what this does is it erases even Ghostbusters 2, which I was like, why would you do that one? Jason Reitman's in that one. And I don't know if this like dealt with the franchise. You know, it goes into similar beats. It does what these Lego sequels do. But the sad thing about all these kind of dealing with the franchise's nostalgia and everything it's accomplished movies is, I think the only one I ever really liked and I thought was an interesting film was Creed, because Creed made a Rocky movie. You know, it understood where Rocky would be, but it also, Ryan Coogler understood filmmaking wise and film theory wise, like what, you know, Rocky basically was an indie film, so he made like kind of an indie Rocky movie with Creed and reinterpreted it. I really love Creed a lot. Creed 2 was whatever, but the Creed 1, well, Creed 2 was still generally a Rocky movie. And what's interesting about these franchises is you have these guys who come in and take these franchises that meant so much to them and basically don't make that movie again. They make a film that's sort of honoring that legacy. They're honoring the film, but they can't be those directors. And I don't think Jason Reitman, you know, maybe this is in a sense technically better directed than what Ivan Reitman did, but I don't think he could make the original Ghostbusters. And I don't think J.J. Abrams could direct like George Lucas or Irving Kershner or even Rian Johnson, because these films are not asking interesting questions and they're not trying to do something interesting with these franchises. They're basically just kind of doing these layup kind of films. And in a sense, they're fucking boring. This whole thing with Ghostbusters continues to not want me to have anything to do with the franchise, other than I have been wanting to revisit the cartoon again, and which I think most of our nostalgia is from. I don't think a lot of it is actually from these movies. Kids who grew up in the 80s. Like, if we're really being honest with ourselves, like Ecto Cooler and the proton packs we had were all merchandise from the cartoon, not from these movies. It's such an empty experience, you know. And we've had this go through so many times, and I think this generation who grew up in, like, you know, we had 9/11 and the economic collapse, and so we are constantly going back and looking at our childhoods and looking at, like, kind of exemplifying the nostalgia for it and of it and all those things and what that represents. And I get that, like, everyone has, you know, Star Wars and Rocky are not everybody's big cornerstone movies, and everyone feels like they should have their moment and stuff. This film inherently doesn't feel special at all. Like, I know all of its moves. Like, it basically just does the first movie, but like way shittier, and like doesn't have Rick Moranis and all that stuff. You know, I mean, they couldn't get Rick Moranis, so I don't like this movie. I don't like this trend where it's going, and I don't really understand why I should even at all be nice to it. You know, if there's going to be a Ghostbusters 3, it should have happened in the 90s. And after it turned 2000, we should have just like let this thing go in general, but also just like make them, if you're going to follow up, like actually make a movie that follows up with that franchise. And I don't feel like I got that. I got this thing that, like, you know, the Norman Rockwell, people say Amblin, but I think it's just Steven Spielberg has a lot of Norman Rockwell tendencies, and I think that Jason Reitman played off of them. And you know, why it isn't dealing with Ghostbusters in New York really at all, which would be interesting, honestly. Like, there's so many interesting things when I was thinking about it. Like, there are interesting things you could do with Ghostbusters, but we're stuck in this whole, like, well, we need to honor it and we need to try to recapture it. And it's really almost the story of the big special effects kind of sci-fi comedy, because we've had so many, and how many have stuck with the public? It's like Ghostbusters and the first Men in Black, and everything else has sort of not really worked. Like, I like Evolution when I saw it once. I like some of these movies, but if we're being real, only like 2 of them have ever really worked. And it's just an idea that doesn't fly, unfortunately. You know, I like Gil Kenan, who wrote Monster House a lot, or directed Monster House. He was involved in Monster House. I like a lot of the cast and stuff, but this, you know, unlike even like Bill and Ted Save the Music, is trying to evolve the franchise in some way and say something about that legacy. All of this movie says is, hey, wasn't Ghostbusters great? And shouldn't we really honor that? And what if we didn't laugh with this Ghostbusters movie? I don't think maybe that's my cup of tea. Maybe I should be like everyone and just honor and be happy to honor the past of the Ghostbusters and everything we've done, but I'm not that person, and I don't think film audiences really should be. I think you should be asking for more than something like this. It's a little depressing to me that this is considered a return to form, because I don't think it's a return to form at all, because this really just, again, isn't a Ghostbusters movie. It's, you know, trying to basically make someone's mixed up imagery or imagination of a Ghostbusters movie with kind of 80s iconography and Steven Spielberg, and that was never what Ghostbusters was. And I think we've gone through this whole thing. We've had 2 Ghostbusters reboots. Even Men in Black was trying to do it, and so many movies have tried to do these kind of things, and they keep failing. And maybe this is like a little bit closer, but I think it just shows the whole failings of trying to do this whole thing in general. And I think the complete kind of disaster it's been artistically, trying to recapture something that I don't think any of them have ever really even thought about recapturing in the same way, or even attempted to do it in the way that made that movie such a real classic. You know, I don't think we'll ever get it, and I think we should maybe stop trying. And I don't really want to have to deal with these movies again, but I feel like there'll probably be another one. So cool. I'll just keep enjoying Ghostbusters and the cartoon and stuff like that. I guess you guys can be happy with whatever the fuck this was. So if you've seen Ghostbusters Afterlife and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.